Hi, and welcome to Episode 2, Series 3 of Child in Time, Growing Up in the 60s. Okay, today we are going outdoors, the great Australian outdoors. Many times when I've been overseas, I've often heard people expressing trepidation at the idea of visiting Australia. They fear being bitten, stung, poisoned, or even eaten if they were to venture into the Australian continent that contains some of the world's most deadly creatures. Usually at this point, I always offer sensible reassurance and explain that the Australian authorities are very experienced and respectful when it comes to repatriating the remains of tourists back to their country of origin if the worst happens. That is, of course, if there are any remains to send back. Sharks and crocodiles tend to eat you all up. I'm kidding, of course. Come on, you've listened to this show before. Let's go back to the 1960s, and we're off to the beach. As I've mentioned several times before, I grew up in an era before sunscreen, an era where a good tan was a sign of health. Mums would brag about their kids being brown as berries. Lots and lots of the wonderful Australian sun. Now, for various atmospheric reasons, Australia gets about 15% more UV than equivalent Northern Hemisphere latitudes. For many decades now, Australia has led the world in per capita skin cancer rates. We are number one. Most of my contemporaries have had some sort of intervention for skin cancer. Me? I've had a BCC, that's a basal cell carcinoma, removed from beside my right eye, and I had 8 stitches. While I had the stitches in, I would often be asked, what's happened? What's happened to your eye? I thought it was boring just to say that I had had a BCC removed. So I would jazz it up and say, "A man insulted the honour of my sister. I challenge him to a duel with swords. Before I delivered the coup de grace, he nicked me with his sword." I don't have a sister, by the way. Right. Back to the beach. We didn't live near the beach, but when we did go, sunburn was pretty much a given. In the water, sometimes there were bluebottles, or Portuguese man-of-war, as they are known in some parts of the world. These are jellyfish with a small bluish sac and long tentacles trailing behind, and they sting between 10 and 30,000 beachgoers every summer. I've been stung a few times. It stings for a while and then goes away. And no fatalities have ever been recorded. And bluebottles are only a sometimes thing at the beach, depending on the tides and such. In northern Australia during the summer months, box jellyfish can be about. You don't want to come in contact with these guys. Certain species described as the world's most venomous creatures. There have been some fatalities, but there are netted off areas to swim and lots of signs to warn the unwary. Interestingly, the jellyfish cannot sting through pantyhose. So wear pantyhose or a stinger suit if you must surf. Sharks. Shark attacks are actually rare. And while Australia is statistically the shark's favourite smorgasbord for dining on humans, your odds are still 2,704,600 to 1 that a shark will attack you. And the odds are even higher if you swim at a patrolled beach. Often those beaches have shark netting and drones and or light planes keeping a watchful eye out above the coastline. And sharks don't like the taste of humans either, apparently. I've never even heard a shark alarm sounded at the beach. In the entire 1960s, I could only find 4 listed shark attacks. And since 1975, if a shark is going to attack, you always get that warning. You know, dum-dum, dum-dum, dum-dum-dum-dum, 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 you know, from Jaws. Please, please always swim at patrol beaches. Swim between the flags. The flags are set up in a safe area. It is not advised to swim at unpatrolled beaches, to swim alone or to swim at night. And if you do go swimming, make sure you know how to swim first. I swam across Sydney Harbour once. I was a competitor in a biathlon. We had to swim directly across the harbour and then run back over the Sydney Harbour Bridge back to our starting point. The swim distance from shore to shore was 1.5 kilometres. Now, I was used to following the black line in my local pool to stay on course, you know, the black line in the middle of the lane. But there is no black line to follow in the harbour. It's just all green. So I just followed the large pack of swimmers in front. The trouble was the leaders veered off course quite dramatically. I didn't know this, but spectators in elevated positions could see that the swimming pack was slowly turning right when the shore was straight ahead. We all just followed. Fortunately, the leaders corrected course before we were about to set out to sea, swimming roughly in the direction of Hawaii. Anyway, we all got there. Another major and inescapable part of being a kid in the 60s outdoors was the sound of summer. Cicadas. Cicadas spend about 6 years underground as nymphs and only emerge to live above ground for a few short weeks. They have no defences and so are prey to birds, spiders, wasps, crickets, and children. We never had a moment of supervision as we climbed high into gum trees to catch cicadas and corral them in a cardboard shoebox. They were easy to locate. Their sound can hit 120 decibels when many are in full song. And that is truly deafening. It's the equivalent of a large jet taking off. After a good day of climbing high into trees, your arms and legs would be covered in minor scratches and abrasions from the gum trees. But I don't recall anyone ever having a serious fall. Catching the cicadas was the thing, and when you took them home, well, they did not make great pets, and we would often just set them free after a day or so. Although one of my younger brothers, who I shall not name, had a habit of taking his cicadas into the bath with him, and you would hear a watery croak of a poor cicada in the bathroom as my sibling tried unsuccessfully to convince the poor little beast to adapt to an amphibian lifestyle. Let's move on to spiders. The Sydney funnel web is said by some sources to be the world's most deadly, but there have been no deaths from funnel web bite since 1981 because the anti-venom is very effective. When I was young, my father was bitten by a funnel web while doing some gardening. I was standing beside him talking to him at the time, and he yelled, "Oh, Scott, get that spider, it bit me." So I reached into the garden bed and scooped it up, and while passing the world's most deadly spider from hand to hand as it crawled up my arm, our neighbour, hearing the commotion, peered over the fence to say, "That's a funnel web, laddie." I was lucky it didn't bite me. As my dad drove himself to hospital, the venom started to kick in and he started to doze off at the wheel, and I kept shaking him and punching his arm to keep him awake. He survived without further incident and was discharged from hospital a few hours later. I don't know anyone else in my childhood or otherwise who has been bitten by a funnel web. Then again, when I'm introduced to new people, I don't usually say, "Hi, I'm Scott. Have you ever been bitten by a funnel web by any chance?" Snakes. Australia is home to 8 of the top 10 most venomous snakes in the world. The deadliest is our inland taipan. One bite is sufficient to kill 100 people. The last inland taipan bite death was in 1955. They live way out in the bush and are shy, apparently. In all my childhood, the only snakes I ever saw in real life were at the zoo. This is despite the fact that there were plenty of bushland close to where I lived, and we used to explore extensively. And all Australian snakes are protected by law. Yeah, we have crocodiles, but you have to go a long way from urban environments to have a chance of seeing one. I've never seen one in a while. And crocodiles are protected species also. Occasionally, there'll be a news report of a croc attack. Tragically, an attack can occur when people swim somewhere known to be crocodile habitats. Most victims are male, taken while swimming or fishing somewhere in northern Australia. And Australia averages about 2 fatal attacks a year. But we have other wildlife that can be troublesome. As a small child, I think I was about 6, it was discovered I had a tick burrowing into the top of my head. My parents and an aunt and uncle discussed what was the right treatment. They decided to pour kerosene over my head. This cure is more urban myth than a medically approved approach. The kerosene stung my eyes badly, and the kerosene only aggravates a tick, prompting it to release more venom into its victim. Eventually, someone got some tweezers and removed the tick. And subsequently, I was always pleased to pass Mum's regular tick checks. It's almost a rite of passage for an Australian child to be swooped by a magpie. During the magpie breeding season, which peaks around August, male magpies become very protective of their partners' eggs and or their chicks. Walk near a nest and you might hear the click of a beak near your head. Click of a beak near your head as the bird circles around for another swoop. These attacks are invariably from behind, and you are more vulnerable if you're on a bike or running. Sometimes these attacks will result in the beak drawing blood from around the victim's head. But the worst accidents occur when bike riders crash or just fall off their bikes when these black and white attack birds don't like you. Moving quickly, that is biking or running apparently, makes you appear more of a threat to the magpie's nest, basically. And magpies are also protected as a native species. When I was a child, there was an attack magpie that had to be negotiated on our walk to school. There was no alternative route. I knew some kids who wore plastic ice cream tubs on their heads as a makeshift helmet with success. It would not stop the swooping, but you could be protected from a beak wound. And just a pro tip, when using a plastic ice cream tub as a helmet, make sure the tub is empty. I wish someone had told me that. By the time I got to school, I was covered in melted ice cream. But I didn't get swooped. So, listeners in the USA, Europe and the UK or anywhere else, chances are you will not be bitten, stung or eaten if you come to Australia. Unless you are not very bright and ignore all warning signs, precautions and advice from people who know the environment. On the reverse side of the coin, I've met Australians who are concerned about visiting the USA, fearing if they go over there they might get shot. Perhaps they've watched too many crime shows or movies. I don't know. Thanks for listening, and we'll talk soon.